Okay, now, hello everyone. Welcome to my narration of this video. We're watching this, and so I'm going to be narrating it for you, and I can let you know what's going on. Okay, I bought the camper for $700. I got it for a little of nothing. The cab over and everything was completely rotten, and so I have glue. I bought a gallon of wood glue, and it's exterior grade wood glue. So it's exterior grade, and this is, I had to put do some reframing in here. The rigid foam insulation comes new in the factory camper, so that I didn't have to replace that. But I made that little platform to stand on, and so, excuse me. And I'm just so in the front it had the pink insulation, and then when I rebuilt the camper, I put foam in the front end, just like the rest of the camper. So that's all the water leakage over the years. I took all the paneling out that was rotten, and so this is the time I think I got that very early version of COVID-19 or something at this point, and so it sat for like 2 months while I was so sick. And after I fell and hit my head, also I couldn't do anything. Okay, this is with the piece of paneling that I just installed, but little of no sense of mine. I actually installed it backwards. You see, it's on the back side, so I ended up putting another piece of paneling over top of it. So now it has 2 layers of paneling, but now I accidentally put that piece of paneling on backwards on the back side, inside out, backwards. So I eventually ended up, that's for structural support to help hold up the cab over. Because the cab over, Molly, where are you? Come here. But anyway, Molly Jane, little queen. The fact is that there is the other one. I'm getting ready to install that. So I got metal braces in there too. So the metal braces, just in case the glue lets go or the glue goes bad. If the glue ever goes bad, then the metal braces will help to hold it together. So I always want to have some extra form of support. So this is around January. I've got the 2x4 running across, and so that's going to be structural support, to make it stronger than it was before, because the 2x2s are going to be running across, and the front end's going to be bolted, screwed to the 2x4, and then the back side is going to rest on that ledge in there. So I'll let you watch the video. And I had to remove all the rotten wood. It took a long time to get rid of a lot of the rotten wood in here. So that's one thing. It took a long time getting down to the bare metal, to the bare wood, to the bare bones, and I had to come up with an idea of what to do. I had to think of what to do and how to go about this, because I have a little bit of experience with construction projects, of building a couple of buildings in my mom's backyard. So when it stayed open like that, the front end of that camper stayed open that way for like 3 months. I was sick and I had a bad case of the flu, and then I had a concussion, so it just sat that way. So those hangers, I got those at Lowe's, and I bought everything at once at Lowe's. Up, Molly. So everything at Lowe's, ordered it. And I had to go back and get a little more, because actually the first batch of stuff cost a little over $500. For the first batch of stuff, it consisted of maybe 4 or 5 sheets of 4x8 sheets of rigid foam board insulation. And I also used to put the new foam board insulation in the floor of the cab over, and in the front of the cab over, and also the side wings and uprights in the tub in the bottom of the camper. I upgraded the insulation, the uprights and the side wings and the body inside the truck bed area. Those parts of a truck camper are usually not insulated very well, so you can see I've got everything out working. And that's the ledge. The only disadvantage of building it the way I did was the ledge is a little higher on the back end. And so that was part of the only bad thing about it. So got my paneling in, my new piece of paneling. Baby, what is it, honey? Up with, oh, come on. Okay, and was getting my paneling in, and it was so tricky to cut out the paneling in the right shape of the windows. See, you can see the remnants of the old framing, of the old paneling. All that paneling in the front end was rotten, and there was little holes in the roof of the cab over. There were little holes in the roof of the cab over. That's another thing that made it leak so bad, was the holes in the roof. See, the aluminum can corrode the same as anything else. So the aluminum had corroded. The aluminum roof, you have a one-piece aluminum roof, and it corroded. So there was tiny little pinholes, so tiny you couldn't even see them. Couldn't even really see the pinholes. That's the graphics, the original graphics of the camper. So now it doesn't have any graphics because they start getting old, they start cracking. So graphics get old and crack and everything like that. So, yeah, graphics get old, they crack. And here's this. You can see I had those little hangers there in the front, and I had those hangers up there to hold up the floor of the cab over against the but I had those to help hold it in place, to be able to hold the plywood sheet in place while I was putting the 2x2s on. And then I screwed the 2x2s in from underneath. You see, I put the 2x2s in and screwed the plywood floor there, plywood to the bottom of the 2x2s. So I'll eventually do that, but that's what the, anyway. You're just sitting here drinking a Dr. Pepper, so Diet Dr. Pepper. And here's my Makita circular saw that I'm going to cut my boards with, my 2x2s. And the 2x2s and the wood that I used to rebuild this cab over was exterior treated wood. See, that's my pile of stuff there. Treated plywood, that's what I use, is treated wood and treated 2x2s for the front end. And see, the old graphics are just looking bad because they were cracked and the camper was just dirty and stuff. So anyway, I thought I would just narrate this video and make it a little better to narrate it. Anyway, you see the front framing in there. Along the front framing, when I redid it, I went ahead and put rigid foam insulation in the front nose. In the front nose, eventually I might take out that front nose and extend it out 2 feet and build a molded fiberglass nose piece. That'll be 2 feet longer to give me the long bed, the north and south bed setup that newer truck campers have. It's that north and south. I made the marks on the plywood as to where my where all my 2x2s would go. I did that before I put the plywood up in the camper. I marked all the markings on the plywood before I put it up in the camper, and then those little metal hangers you see in the front against the 2x4. That 2x4 gives the cab over floor a lot of rigidity. It makes it rigid and strong, and I used a whole gallon of wood glue to do this project. That's the kind of project this was. I used a whole gallon of wood glue. And I actually made the camper a little more heavy than it was before. So I wanted you to know that I made the camper a little heavier. And I'm just plotting everything out here, as you can see, as to where everything goes. Still recovering from a bad concussion of the brain. Mild traumatic brain injury, you see, because I had all kinds of symptoms. And that's why I didn't cut out the boards as well as I could have, because I was still recovering from that mild traumatic brain injury thing. I've never been so sick in my life. So you can see the remnants of the original plywood floor. And you see, I eventually took that out and got rid of that and cleaned it up. So that's the framing in the front. And in between those 2x2s in the front, that's where my Okay, so I've got all my boards, cutting all my boards there, and just getting them all marked. Those are treated 2x2s, is what all of those are. And the good old vintage Makita circular saw my granddad owned. So I've got all my boards, my 2x2s, got my front of my cab over. I'm going to eventually put new. See, there it is. I'm going to show you. See, I've got it screwed in with screws, big long screws. And I just didn't nail this thing together. I screwed it together with screws and drilled the holes with a drill and screwed them in. See, I've got everything marked where it's supposed to be, with the 2x2s are screwed in place against the 2x4. And the brackets, hanging brackets are there. And so I had to modify a little bit where your plywood is there. I mean, it's different. When I did it, it was completely different than the original design. So, excuse me. Ooh. Okay, I'm going up in there at camper again. So, the dinette area. I hadn't even started working. I guess I finished my dinette area. I had already finished my dinette area. So you'd seen that in the previous video, that lower area that was rotten. So redid that. See, I got these and I screwed them and I drilled. I countersunk those screws. I had to make a bigger hole and countersink the screws so that my screws going down into the camper would hold. See, it's bolted in the back. The screws are bolted in of the back and in the front. So I made sure that it's everything's secure in there. Everything's on center too. The way it's supposed to be, like maybe once every foot. So it's all my wood and everything. So you can see my boxes of screws that I had bought. So got everything all lined out. There's my gallon of glue, my big gallon of glue. I made sure I got exterior grade glue is what I got. So yeah, I'll show you this again so you can see it again, and so I can talk about it a little more. There's my shop vac in there. Got my little shop vac in there. And so just getting my screws out and all our artillery. That's why I'm showing it to you again, so I can talk about it more. Eventually I'm going to put a pass-through in there. Get rid of that little window. You put a little pass-through door to pass through from the camper to the cab of the truck, with a removable rear window in the truck, or a sliding rear window in the truck big enough for a person to crawl through. So it makes it more practical. Seeing you have that stanchion in the floor, that's another thing, is the stanchion in the floor for the dinette. I didn't want that stanchion in the floor, so I'm going to get a lagoon table in the future, because I don't want a big stanchion in the middle of the floor. But I guess it's out of chronological order, because the picture I had just showed you was with it already bolted down. I realize now that picture was the previous picture I showed you where it was already bolted down. But we can go back in retrospect and see this. Anyway. Anyway. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And you can see you mark everything. Put everything the way it's supposed to be. And I drilled holes into the I'm making a video. I'll call you in a minute. Anyway. You see, I'm drilling the holes where to let me know where the 2x2s are going to be, but also so I can drill the screws up through the wood from underneath to hold that plywood piece onto the 2x2s. And so the 2x2s are secured from underneath to the plywood and also to the 2x4 and to the camper itself. So, those 2x2s are in there really good, and they're also glued in there with that exterior grade wood glue. So I went to all that trouble to make sure I held everything in place the way it's supposed to be. So I know I showed you the picture of it already being constructed first, of the countersunk screws going into the camper. That I just kind of got it a little backwards when I set this video up. So we'll just look over that. I don't feel like going back and doing it over again. And that front wall there, you can see where it's not exactly right. It looks bad. That's a patch piece of paneling somebody else had put in the camper. That was a previous repair from a previous owner. So the camper had problems with leaking before. It had problems with rot before, way before I even got it, because those people had repaired it years before I even bought the camper. So whoever did that repair had taken the front end of the camper apart, before I even bought it, a previous owner. And the man I got it from was 82 years old. I know he didn't do it recently because it had been done a number of years before. And so anyway, these are treated 2x2s. They're all treated. That's exterior grade plywood I use too. That's what all this is that I've used. I didn't use any cheap stuff. I used good stuff. The paneling, interior paneling is cheap stuff, but it's still good stuff. It's not just Luan. It's actually, you can actually use it for interior finishing and stuff. So it's pretty good stuff. Plytanium, I think, or it's Revolution Ply. That's what it's called. Plytanium, I think, is that stuff on the floor there. That's the Plytanium. The Revolution Ply is on the wall. That's my wall paneling. And I didn't know exactly how to, you see, your paneling has to work as a structural support to hold up your wall of your cab over. Because the cab over is a big, heavy protrusion that extends out of the front of the camper, It sticks out the front of the camper. It's a big protrusion that protrudes out the front of the camper. If you don't have any paneling to stiffen up the wall, the whole front of the cab bed where your bed is will flop over. The whole thing will flop over. So you can't just let it. You have your paneling works as a structural element in a camper with that cab over that sticks out with you. That's why in the factory, see what I'm going to do? I'm going to take this screw and put it down through there and countersink it. And I've already showed you the finished product, but I'm going back and showing the video backwards. But and I've got it all glued together. You can see where I'm gluing everything. So, and I took the time to come back through and narrate this video. So, it's called Video. I'm going to let you. It's an app you can get, and I've got a Chromebook. So, it's an HP Chromebook. So, you can get it for Chromebook. It's called Video, and it's free. So many hours of video editing. So, you might want to check out Video. On your app store or wherever you get apps of Google. I use Google a lot, so the Google apps or whatever you got that to use. So you can see where I've got that, and I'm going to eventually put in some cross members to go across from 2x2 to 2x2. Between the 2x2s, the cross members will hold it all together even more and give you support for your floor when you're laying on the bed. So, more extra support and things like that. See the screws? The screws are coming up from underneath. They're coming up from underneath into the 2x2. So it's pretty stiff, And you've got a piece of 1/4-inch plywood under the 2x2s, 1/4-inch plywood on top of the 2x2. So it's the 2x2s are sandwiched in between two pieces of plywood. So extra strong, but yet not too heavy either. So that's where I'm getting all the screws in place to finally hold the 2x2s in place the way they're supposed to. But before I did that screws, I let the glue dry to hold the 2x2s in. I let the glue dry first. So I had actually let the glue dry first. So narrating the video, you can have the narrated version of this video, or you can just watch the version with the music in it. And I did get it a little bit backwards. I always get things a little backwards. So Okay, now I'm going to put crossboards in just like this one. So every one of these, I've got a system here. You see, as in each row, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T. And the measurements of each one of these, they're all a little different, right down to the 1/8 of an inch. And so each one is measured. This is C. And so they're all measured. So when I get all these cut 2x2s, I try the 2x4s, but the 2x4s are a little thicker than the 2x2s, so I can't really use the 2x4s. So I have to use 2x2s, and I'm going to send them crossways, and I'm not going to put any more studs in between because I don't think it's necessary. I don't think these 2x2s are going to break. By the time I get the 1/4 inch board down, and someday I could even put down strips that go this way over top of it, or boards over top of these 1x3s over top of it, to give it some ventilation under the bed to prevent condensation and mold. And some people do that in a camper, so that's possible too, to do that. So I'm going to go out here and I'm going to cut all these 2x2s, and I'll get my trusty yardstick, and I'll put all these in place. I'll glue every one of these and put them in place.